So this is Andy Weir, best-selling author of The Martian, Artemis, and Project Hail Mary. 2 out of these 3 books have been turned into blockbuster movies. But while Weir seemed to burst onto the scene with the movification of his first book, the journey and creation of his million-dollar empire was more circuitous than you might believe, and there's a lot of lessons in it that many people can learn from in their own entrepreneurial journey. Today, Andy Weir is estimated to be worth about $50 million, and while that estimation is very likely wrong, it is a far cry from where he started. So let's go ahead and start with The Martian, his first book. Andy Weir ended up writing The Martian over the course of a couple of years. In order to get it out there, he started with a 3,000 person email list built over 10 years.
I was working on those 3 serials at once. I had a modest mailing list of about 3,000 people. Which seems like a lot, but remember, it took me 10 years to build that up.
Doing the math on that, that's almost 1 person per day. And it can turn into a real value down the line if you are planning far enough ahead. Because that 3,000 person email list ended up resulting in 35,000 Amazon orders, selling the publishing rights in 2011, then 19 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and culminating in a blockbuster movie. A movie that was directed by Ridley Scott and starred Matt Damon.
And so Ridley Scott came and said, I'll direct it. And they're like, really?
Now, the writing process of The Martian was fascinating. Weir would end up writing a chapter at a time and releasing it on his blog, basically about a chapter every month. But it's important to realize that this was not his first book. He had actually written 2 books prior to The Martian, and we'll get to those in just a minute. He would write a chapter, post it to his website,
and I'd get feedback from my readers, and they would tell me all the mistakes I made.
And then he would improve it. And he would make the product better and better. The book was written live and in public, and everybody had input on making it better so that it was something that they loved in addition to something that he would love. And he made something that a few people really love. And this brings up a statement from Brian Chesky, who is currently the CEO of Airbnb, where he says when developing a product, what you want to do is not try to make something for 1 million people. You make something for 1 person. Then you go get another person and you expand it so that 2 people love it. And then you go get another person and you expand it so 3 people love it. And you go from there. Andy Weir ended up actually following this process indirectly by having just a few people following along on his website as he would write this story, letting them give feedback, and then he would improve the story and the details within it so that they would love it more. But this is where it got interesting, because he ended up finishing the book, and then everybody heard about it and would start telling other friends about it, and he started getting feedback. People ended up asking him to release it in a single format. So he went ahead and he took all the serial blog posts that he had done to write the book and then posted them as a single e-reader format. But then he got a little bit more feedback.
And I started to get email from people saying like, hey, I love The Martian, but I hate reading it on your website because your website sucks. So they said, can you make an e-reader version? Just post it an e-reader version to your site. So I'm like, okay, I made an e-reader version that people can download and put on their e-readers. There you go.
So he decided to actually go ahead and turn it into an e-reader format. And what's interesting right now is that Amazon required that you sell it for 99 cents. So Andy Weir went ahead, uploaded it to Amazon Direct Publishing, and then sold it for 99 cents.
So I set the price to the minimum 99 cents, meaning I was pulling in a cool 30 cents a copy. Once they posted, then I announced to my readers, okay, everybody, you can read it for free on my website, download the e-reader for free from my website, or you can pay Amazon $1 to put it on your Kindle for you. Knock yourselves out. And more people paid the $1 than got it for free.
And the fascinating thing that he learned, and that all of us can learn by watching him, is the fact that when he did that, he ended up selling 35,000 copies at 99 cents a pop through the Amazon Direct Kindle Publishing program. And that was at the start. And the reason he was able to make all those sales is because his website gave him the distribution and marketing that he needed, and many people ended up buying the item because even though 99 cents is not terribly expensive, it is a cost, and they could have had it for free from his website, but the convenience of it was worth a very small fee to have it just automatically downloaded to a Kindle. When you make your product more readily accessible, more people are willing to engage with it because there's less friction in getting to it. There are a lot of books to read, there's a lot of content to consume. The cost is actually not one of the primary movers. It is really the convenience. Is it in front of me? Is it easy to get a hold of? And publishing it in this way allowed him to get better distribution than even a free website could do. So it's important to realize that payments are not necessarily always friction. There are a lot of other ways that it can be harder because people want to use it in a certain way. Make sure that you're making something that other people can easily get a hold of in the way that they want to get a hold of it. And also, don't get caught up in cost. Many entrepreneurs believe that the cheapest is better, but cheap is not always good. And quite frankly, frankly, as a reader myself, if I see a free book on Amazon, I am immediately somewhat suspicious around the quality of that book. And from that book being published on Amazon and now having greater distribution in one of the main book websites on the planet, one thing led to another.
And then Matt Damon said, hey, I'm interested in playing the lead. And the studio was like, okay, now we're taking this seriously.
And the book turned into a movie that had a blockbuster run of $630 million. With only a $108 million budget. That is a really good outcome for what was a serial science fiction blog. And that's how this first-time author got discovered in the world and became a millionaire overnight. Except that this was not his first book. Remember what I said earlier? He had written 2 books before this, and he was actually working on several other similar style of stories on his website. As he says, the first book was bad and he knew it.
That while I was in college, I wrote a book, and it was really bad. It was so bad that even at the time I wrote it, I was like, this is bad.
The second book was bad, and he didn't know it, but he was able to get those reps out. Many people believe that when you're starting something or creating some product, that you are going to be brilliant on your first pass because you have so much innate talent. But even if you are good at handling a basketball, you still need to do hundreds of layups to make sure that you can do it every single time, consistently, reliably, and enjoyably. A book is hundreds of pages. Each one of those pages has to be good. And the more of them that are good, the better the chance is that people will like your book and continue reading it. So you need to get a bunch of pages written in order to get good at creating a book. Equally, if you want to create a product, you need to create a bunch of apps, or you need to create a bunch of prototypes, or you need to create a bunch of prints. Whatever it happens to be, figure out how to practice in order to get good at the thing until it's good enough that people will actually pay you for it. And be okay with that journey, because you very likely are not going to build your first product on the first try. Zuckerberg didn't do that, Gates didn't do that, Dell didn't do that, Jobs didn't do that. All of them had failures and iterations and tries before they finally figured out what they were actually doing that made all the money. And how much money did he end up making from that movie deal that created a $630 million movie? A few $100,000, somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000, because that is the typical price for optioning a book to be made into a movie. Now, it's possible his agent was pretty good and said, okay, if it makes more than this certain amount of revenue, then the author gets a certain amount of kickback, but there are no details around that. All we know is what Weir has kind of admitted to, which is that it was a low $100,000s of dollars. But he also makes the money from the book sales. And an author generally makes somewhere between 10 and 15% on the sales of each copy of their book. And when a movie is made, your book sales go up. As of 2017, The Martian sold 3 million copies. Let's presume simple math and it's all a bunch of cheap paperbacks that are only $10. That's $3 million going to Weir on the low end, which is not a bad gig. Now, obviously, he has continued to sell the book, and The Martian continues to be one of the books that many sci-fi readers read, but the sales have probably declined annually from where they were at their peak, especially when the movie came out. Online in the Oogie Boogie universe, people are estimating that Weir is probably worth about $50 million. That's probably the wrong number, because even with all the residuals from the movie and so on and so forth, if those deals even existed, it doesn't really add up to $50 million. But having made $3 million from the sales of the books and several $100,000 from the options on the movies, and then maybe some amount of kickers from them, it easily gets up to $10 or even $12 million over the course of the book and the subsequent books that he has written that have also been reasonably successful. And let's not forget, money wisely invested, speaking engagements, all the residual stuff that comes from having a very popular book and author notoriety. But this is the thing to take away from this. He gained a baseline skill first by writing a couple of books that nobody ever read and nobody ever knows about. And then he started on a third one and worked with his customers, the readers of his book, to optimize it and polish it and turn it into something that only a few people, less than 3,000, actually liked. But he was one of the people who liked that. He was making a book for himself, one that he loved, and then a few other people started to love as well. And when you have a few people who love it, you have a seed that can grow, because they will tell their friends about it, and those will ideally also tell their friends, and it can grow from there. And after all this work, 10 years of writing books and trying around and playing around with the idea, he became an overnight success with a single book. And that was able to happen because he didn't just write it and put it up on on the internet, he wrote it and charged money for it so that people could get to it easily. He made a really good product, he made it easy to get a hold of, and he had a monetization strategy on it that was kind of forced upon him, but also helped to legitimize it. With the success of The Martian, Weir was able to stop his career as a full-time software developer and actually become a full-time author. His latest book, Project Hail Mary, which I can highly recommend, it's a very good book, even if you're not a hard science fiction fan, it is being turned into a new movie releasing next year with Ryan Gosling as the lead. And this entire story is something that we can all learn from. An overnight success takes time, effort, skill, and iteration until you actually make something that people want and enjoy. Have a great day, everybody.